Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to the Muslim Game Changers podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories from the best and brightest of the Muslim world. I'm your Hussein, and I'm very excited to take you on a journey of discovery featuring high-profile Muslim leaders from all around the globe. Welcome back to another episode of the Muslim Game Changer podcast. It is with pleasure and excitement today, guys, that I introduce our guest, Karim Chowdhury, a multi-awarded individual, also ranked as the top 100 executive role models of 2023 by Involved on YouTube. This podcast, it's called Muslim Game Changers, right? I think it's fair to say that our guest today has finished the game of banking. With an impressive track record spanning over 13 years in the banking sector, he has held positions at prestigious institutions such as Santander, Nationwide Building Society, HSBC, Lloyds Private Bank, Shoulders Personal Wealth, and now Butterfield Group. What sets him apart is his unique qualification and experience, all achieved at a younger age compared to his peers in similar roles. One quote, that it's our tradition now, that resonates deeply with him is the following: "What is destined to reach you will reach you, even if it be underneath two mountains. What is not destined to reach you will not reach you, even if it's already between your two lips." Amazing. Didn't know about this quote. Assalamu alaikum, Karim. How are you doing today?
Wa alaikum assalam. I'm very well, thank you. And thank you for that rather lofty introduction.
It was a pleasure crafting it. And my first question is the following. We have a new tradition in this podcast where the previous guest asked a new guest a question. I think the audience is aware of it now. So the question for you is asked from our brother Mohammed Ragab from Washington, D.C., who works as a business process optimization lead at AstraZeneca. What is your take on finding mentorship? Are you considering mentors outside of your faith, or are you making a concerted effort within the Muslim community?
Okay. Well, yeah, mentoring is a very important subject. Now, in terms of being a mentor and also having a mentor, both are important to me. So I can probably go back quite early in my career when I started having probably more informal mentors in place. But I can also talk about the mentor I have in place now. So the mentor I have in place now is a white male, just retired, was in very senior roles. He worked for UBS for over 10 years. He's set up another private bank. He works as a non-executive director. He's not from a Muslim background. But I don't think that should stop anyone from reaching out to mentors or looking for people that they can inspire to be like or can feel they can help them in their journey. I think when you're looking for mentors, yes, sometimes it does help to look for someone that either looks or feels a bit more like you, because it can inspire you and you can think, actually, if this person can do it, so can I. And what was their journey and how can that help me?
Yeah.
But I also think you shouldn't narrow your search down. For me, like I say, finding the best mentor at this stage of my career was looking out there and seeing which individuals can add a lot of value and who has done something that I aspire to do and haven't quite reached yet. And this individual was the person who I felt was the best fit at this stage of my career. But you're right, earlier stages of my career, I did have different mentors, which were Muslim individuals in similar roles to what I wanted to do at the time. And it was very helpful. It gave me an insight into what challenges and barriers they faced and what I could do to navigate that. On the flip side of that as well, if you look at being a mentor, so I am a mentor to other individuals, both at my university that I went to and the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments, where I've done a lot of my studies. So with that, I specifically asked to mentor individuals from diverse backgrounds. Don't necessarily need to be Muslims, but they can be, or it could be from other backgrounds. For example, so one of the individuals I mentored is from a single parent background. Another is from a low income family background. So these are people that I feel may need more support and may benefit from having someone like me in place. Whereas other individuals who, again, are at the university already have people who can help them in this journey. For example, their parents in professional jobs have contacts and so on. So for me, it's both sides of it. You need to have great mentors that can help you, and that can either be formal or informal. But I also think once you reach a stage and you think you can give back and help others, you should.
This is a note for the European audience. I really think the Anglo-Saxon have really the spirit of mentoring, which I find absolutely beautiful, that we should get inspired by this attitude of trying to give back when you are in a certain position to help others. I think it's absolutely beautiful. But now let's switch to you. And my main first question, we want to know about you. Where were you born? And what has been, the full journey from the location where you were born to where you are today? Tell us your story.
Sure. I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour of my story, and obviously you can ask any questions if you want me to elaborate on any parts. But as you probably guessed from my accent, I was born and brought up in the UK. I was born in Angel Islington, which is part of North London. I spent roughly, I think, around 25 years there. I then started to travel and live and work abroad. So I started with small steps, went up to Scotland, worked there for a short time, then off to Jersey and Channel Islands, worked there for a short period. And now I'm working in Bermuda. So that's where my travels have taken me, and mainly through work. In terms of upbringing as well, most of my family are in the UK, and again, centered around Angel Islington and surrounding areas.
What do you think is the main difference? Because now you have really you have been almost in every part of the UK. I'm not going to mention also there is Northern Ireland, etc. But you have been in Scotland, you have been overseas, you have been in England. What notable differences would you observe between all those territories, and how have you grown yourself navigating throughout them?
So I think for me, it's really expanded my knowledge of different people, different lifestyles, different ways of doing business. And this really helps, because especially in my industry, you're dealing with a lot of clients who are international, may not just be based in one country. And with the changes generally in the world, things have become a lot more global. So having that experience, having that level of expertise really, really helps in my day-to-day job. I can resonate with people that are expats, that are living abroad, and the challenges they face. And the same way, I can look at people in the UK and I've got similar backgrounds to them and so on. So it really helps. And I think if anyone does have the opportunity to travel and work abroad, they should really take it. But I get the challenges that come with it as well. It's not easy. I miss my family. I'm really close to my family. I miss my friends. I miss certain foods and so on. So the challenges that come with it. But the same way, the experience is amazing. Living and working in different countries, meeting different people, understanding their ways of life, their cultures, their differences. It's all about going there. For me, is embracing that and making the most of it. And I mean, the weather isn't too bad here either. But
My brother Karim, you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast your experience being also a mentor. What are some key advice that you would give out to those mentees that you could give out in this podcast? Because some of the audience is also young. It would be really good if they can benefit from your experience.
I think one of the things that I always highlight for them is how important it is to start networking, even at a young age. So this could be amongst people at college, at university, different jobs you might have, be it part-time jobs, because these individuals could end up working in similar industries. You could end up helping each other through your career journeys and so on. But one of the other things I would also say is start to get experience as early as possible. Because once you graduate, most people are at the same position. They've all graduated, they've all got a degree, and they're all applying for the same jobs. It's a very competitive job market out there, especially in places like the UK. So it's how are you going to differentiate yourself from others? And if you can demonstrate that through work experience, that really helps, and it really helps you stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. I remember an individual I met at my business school. He targeted wealth management. And I remember that at maybe 22, 23 years old, he's done an internship in Hong Kong, one in New York, one in London. He was training with me for another internship in Dubai. And I was like, this guy is so proactive. But maybe this is where our community maybe lacks the vision very early in their teenage years to already be preparing that period of time. Do you think that growing up, being a colored person, also being a Muslim, you had to work even harder to catch up on those missed advices, etc., or you had it rather easy? You were competing at the same level?
Yeah, I think there definitely are different challenges that you face due to different reasons. One thing I would add into that as well is social class. If I look back and I think about my parents, I mean, they've done really well, but they came to the UK in their teens. Neither of them went to university. Neither of them had that educational background. Neither of them understood certain professions. So I couldn't necessarily look at my parents and think, okay, that's the universities I should be going to, that's the jobs I should be doing, and this is how I do it. Along with all the other challenges, obviously, like you mentioned, being of a different race, of a different religion, and so on. So it does put you in a minority. And I do think that comes with certain challenges. And for me, quite early on in my career, and even more recently as well, I'd usually look around, I'd see that I was different from most of my colleagues in similar roles. And I did sometimes try and change who I was to try and fit in and be more like them. But I think as I've grown and as I've understood more about how everything works, I now realize that I'm different and I embrace that. And I really see that as a positive. And what I want to do, and this is where my mentoring work comes in as well, and a lot of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that I do, is making others comfortable with being different.
Amazing.
And saying, okay, there is nothing wrong with being different. You should be comfortable with that. You should see that as a positive rather than a negative, and try and use that to your advantage, rather than think, actually, I don't look and feel like these people. I should change things about me to try and fit in. Because like I say, that was something that I did and I was very conscious of very early on in my career.
Excellent. I know that you're very engaged in diversity and inclusion and equity. Can you tell us some of the initiatives you have launched or participated or even sponsored because you're a VP? Can you tell us some of these initiatives and like what kind of changes were the result of those efforts? That would be amazing.
Yeah, so I've been involved in this area in my current role, but it's still very early days in terms of what we're doing at Butterfield Group in terms of DE&I. But we've put together a council, we are working on initiatives, and I'm sure we'll build on this. If I look back at my previous role with Schroders Personal Wealth, so I was deputy chair of our what was called Unity Network, which represented diversity, equity, and inclusion specifically for ethnic minorities. So during that time, there was a lot that we did to really help change the face of the business. I could sit here and talk about this for a very long time, but I'll keep it very brief and just point out major changes that we had. One of the things we done is we looked at the branding and the imaging that we used as a company. So, for example, if you went on our website, was it representative of our staff? Was it diverse? And this was all areas, not just ethnic minorities. This is all communities, minority groups. And we made sure there was changes to that. And there was different people put on the website. We also looked at client literature. And again, we made sure that reflected our client base. So that was some of the stuff we done. And then we also celebrated and educated people around different events. So, for example, I done a Ramadan video, an Eid video. I had my CEO join in with this, different members of the staff, and so on.
Amazing.
Yeah, and we'd have an Eid event. So during Eid, in the London office, we set up around the break area, and we had lots of food. I mean, food's an easy way to get people involved. So yeah, people came. They were like, "What's this about?" So they wanted to know more, and that's where we can educate them and celebrate with them and say, "Hey, look, this is what some of your colleagues are celebrating. This is what it means to them." So they understood more about each other as well. And again, it made individuals feel more comfortable. So, for example, Muslims celebrating. So I actually had a manager once look at my diary and call me up and say, "Karim, I can see you blocked out the whole day for EID. What is EID?" So, that's examples of where I think it's really, really important to educate others. Let them know what you're doing, what you're celebrating, and so on. It's the same for other people. I want to know what other people are doing, what they're celebrating, why, and so on.
Very good.
So I think it helps everyone.
But I have a question which is going to link up my two previous questions.
Sure.
I want to know about both D&I and the wealth of people. You mentioned, for instance, social classes. I want to see now, among the clients you handle, it's high net worth type of clients, especially in Bermuda. I want to know if you observe diversity among your clients, because this would reflect also the society, especially the United Kingdom society, but also you handle international clients. I want to see if you see that diversity reflect among your portfolio.
Yeah, so in terms of my portfolio, the diversity of it is it's probably not as you'd want it to be. I mean, I look after people in Bermuda and internationally, but I'd say generally when you get to this level of wealth, it is very skewed, as you can imagine. But the same way, we are seeing younger individuals that are starting to do really well and starting to build that wealth. I mean, historically, I think when it came to ethnic minorities, they were probably more entrepreneurial. The ones that have done well have generally earned their money in different ways, not necessarily through their careers. But now we are seeing a mix of that, where you are seeing people working, as partners in law firms or, accounting firms, in banking industry, so on. Whereas historically, people tended to go more towards the business route. But yeah, I'd say Bermuda is a very unique place when it comes to diversity, and it's got a very rich history, and it has its unique challenges, which is very different to the UK. And again, the UK, if I look at London, it's an extremely diverse place, great place, but where I've worked in some of the regional offices in Oxford, in Cambridge and so on, it's less diverse, both in terms of the client base, in terms of the staff, in terms of pretty much everything else. But Bermuda, like I say, is a very different makeup and has its different set of clients.
Yeah. Karim has been, as I said, my introduction, has been awarded multiple titles. One of them being Top 100 Influential Muslims in the UK, an initiative led by Equalitics, which I want to recommend. I will put in the show notes a link to their website because the brother leading this initiative is absolutely amazing. I want to encourage this initiative. I want you to tell us the story behind it, like the little journey that have been through it and how maybe you have benefited from this title, what emotion maybe you felt when you actually made it to this title. Just tell us the story behind it.
Sure. I mean, one of the things, I'm still surprised every time I'm nominated for any award. I do see a lot of what I do as just normal everyday things I should be doing as an individual. So wherever I've benefited or wherever I've learned from, I try and take those experiences, share it with others, and I promote diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout. For Muslims, yes. For ethnic minorities, yes. But generally, I think it's very important to help every group of minority individuals. So not only am I just supporting my own causes, it's also important to be an ally of other causes as well. So I look at other groups, I also try and help them. But specifically for this award, I think, so with my journeys with these awards, it all pretty much started in my previous role. And like I say, I've never really been involved in diversity, equity, inclusion in the past. It's only my previous role where I started, and that was where the business came to a few of us and said, we think you'd be great to lead this. Prior to that, I've probably stayed away from it all. I've thought of it as a bit of a tick box exercise for businesses. I thought a lot of businesses do it just to look good. It doesn't really make an impact. But when they came to me and specifically said, we want you guys to lead this, we want you to be involved, what you say and what the research you have and so on, we can make business decisions with this. That's where I thought, okay, actually, this sounds different to the message I've got in the past. Because in the past, it was, these are the people leading it, you tell us what you think. Whereas this was, actually, Karim, would you like to be involved in leading this? And you can tell us what you think, which I thought was very interesting. And like I say, that's where I thought, okay, this is different. Once I started getting involved in this, we were making a change in the business. We could go and we were asking for pay gap reviews, looking at different people and why different groups of people are getting paid differently. And they'd analyze this and they'll take it as high up as they needed to.
Very good.
So this is where I felt, okay, I'm making a difference here and so on. And a lot of the stuff I was then doing within the organization was being recognized internally. And then, I started being nominated for different awards. And then I think the first award was one of the Empower ones, but that was as a future leader, which was in 2022. And then on the back of that, this Top 100 Muslim Award, I was then nominated for that. And again, when you look at some of the names on these awards, you've got famous sports stars like Mir Khan and cricketers and so on. And it's really nice to be on these lists. It's like, recognition is always nice, but the same way, it's not just me that's making all this happen. There is actually other people supporting this. It just so happens that I'm being the one nominated for whatever reason. And again, I really appreciate people nominating me and for me to win these awards, but it's usually a bigger effort from a bigger team. So my journey in a nutshell is just getting involved in these projects with work. And again, a similar thing where I am now at Butterfield Group is they've come to me and said, hey, look, we've seen some of the great work you've done in the past. Would you like to be involved in a similar sort of thing here? And again, I'm not going to say no. If they've asked me to do it and I feel I can add value and I can positive change, I am going to do it and get involved.
And people have proved to be more efficient when they're happy at work. They feel that they can be themselves at work. It has proven that their performance afterwards is recognized to be higher after such an initiative. I wanted to also say two things that I retained from your speech. It's that I encourage also our community to not only advocate for our own recognition and diversity in the workplace, but also other ones. So for instance, I was in Canada, there's a lot of Sikh, of Hindus, of people who are Christian, of any, for instance, there are First Nations, etc. I want to have the same thing as you. All the time, it's very good to educate ourselves to other cultures. It's very important. It's how we demonstrate our open-mindedness, and we have everything to benefit from it. I felt so much better when, I got to understand the culture of others. It's something that I've lived in Canada especially, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. One thing also that relates to what you were saying, Karim, you were talking about analysis. I'm a data analyst. So I'll just say one thing. One day, I got offered a job as a D&I analyst, where basically they were analyzing the number of people who applied to a job, from what ethnicity they were, to until each step of the recruitment process until the moment they signed. So when the people applied, what type of ethnicity there was, and at the moment the people sign, what type of ethnicity they were, so that they can see if there is any bias in the recruitment process. I thought this quantitative approach was really good to destroy any type of bias. And also at the same time, they were providing L&D session, etc., to raise awareness. So I thought it was absolutely beautiful. Maybe you want to say something on this, Karim?
Yeah, that's really interesting that you've been involved in that. I mean, when we looked at it at work previously, we found similar things where, there's certain types of people. I mean, even if you look at male and female, males are more likely to apply for a job on average, even if they don't fit the whole job description and criteria, whereas women are less likely. It's something as simple as that. When you do the analysis and you look at that, you realize actually less people from certain demographics are going to apply for certain jobs. So it's working with your HR teams, looking at data such as that and saying, how can we make the application process more open for everyone to apply? Because if you have a starting point of less diverse people, then the outcome is going to reflect that.
Exactly. We have done our chapter on D&I, which was super interesting, and thank you so much for your insights. I wanted to know more about your career. At what point in time have you thought, okay, I'm going to switch to banking? This is where I think my passion is. This is where I want to make my career in. And what type of academic studies have you led since then? And also the jobs that you have during your academic studies or when you finish your academic studies?
So with my journey, not a lot of people know this, but I actually started my career in HR, human resources.
No way.
I worked in... So I actually worked in HR for 2.5 years before I transitioned to banking. So my undergraduate degree was in business studies, majoring in HR. I then followed that pathway and started working in HR. I'd probably say 6 months into the role, I quickly realized that wasn't the career path for me. It was a great experience. And I used that time in HR to then help fund my master's. And my master's in investment fund management. And we're going all the way back to sort of 2008 during the banking crisis. And a lot of that sort of inspired me to look at this career path. I'm not sure what conclusion you'll draw from someone looking at a banking crisis and decide to go into banking, but
this is what I was thinking. Were you trying to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to make the banking sector a better word? Is this the vision?
I probably can't tell you exactly what was going through my mind at the time, but I looked at it and it was really, really interesting to think, so much had gone wrong and these people were really had so much impact on what could happen around the world. There's also my sister as well. One of my older sisters, she was working financial services at the moment, and she was sort of in her mid to late 20s, earning a good salary. 6-figure salary at that age was pretty good. So she also inspired me as well, I'd say, to follow her career path. So when I looked at it, I thought I could work in HR. It doesn't really inspire me. I'm more of a people person. I like to be in front of people. I like to interact with people. And I think the part of HR I did enjoy was when I worked, for example, in the staff development side, where we were doing training sessions and working with people and so on. But then I know, HR probably a great career for certain people, but it just didn't fit my personality. So for me, like I say, I'd done my master's and, having that HR job was great. Even at that stage, I was pretty much earning what the national average was in the UK. In my early 20s, after university, and, financially was okay. But like I say, I wanted more, I wanted something different, I wanted to enjoy what I do. So after my master's, I started on a graduate scheme with Santander, and a very tough time to start in that industry. Having gone through everything we'd gone through, a loss of confidence as well. The public generally didn't like people that worked in banks. So, and this was me coming out of university, just finished my master's, I had some work experience behind me, but again, it was very difficult to go in and learn everything. My grad scheme as well was an accelerated scheme, so it was 1 year, where they want to fast track you to another position and so on. So even at that stage, I was like, right, I was very single-minded. I thought I want to be a financial advisor at that point. That was my aim. I wanted to give financial advice to people. And then towards the end of my sort of grad scheme, Santander had a restructure. They started getting rid of their financial advisors. And I thought, oh, great, what do I do now? So this is where I went into lending. So some of the qualifications for financial advice and lending are quite similar at the early stages. So I then looked at lending roles. I became, a lender at Nationwide. And then from that, it's having conversation with them, knowing they're growing their financial advice arm. I then got promoted to financial advice and so on. So that was sort of the start of my career path. And I pretty much knew what I wanted to do once I entered the industry. Then from there, I wanted to then work abroad and work with bigger clients. And then this is where I ended up going to Jersey, Channel Islands as an international wealth manager, dealing with high net worth clients internationally. And from there, I then decided, okay, I actually want to deal with bigger clients, more interesting and complex clients. And that's where my journey then went into private banking, where we've got bigger minimums, we've got bigger clients, more complex clients, and so on. And that's pretty much where I am now today. It's dealing with high net worth clients, ultra high net worth clients, trusts, family offices. Really, really interesting, really, really complex. It's not everyday people like I would had at the start of my career, walking into a bank and seeing you there. This is very different. So yeah, that's sort of my career in a nutshell.
Now that was a very good description, and I wanted to ask a question. Let me put myself in the shoes of someone who wants to choose the path of education they would want in finance. They're hesitating between VC, venture capitalists, private equity, M&A, etc. How do I navigate through the finance industry? What would you have liked to have in terms of precise advice, like what branch would you run people in if they were choosing a sector in finance? What would you recommend?
So one of the things I would recommend is you probably should go on certain websites and look at certain jobs, read the job descriptions, see what the roles are, see where you want to get to. Also reach out to people. I mean, we've got some great tools now, with, for example, LinkedIn, which I use quite regularly. You can go on there. You can find individuals who are doing these jobs. Yeah. You can look at their career progression. You can see how they got to where they are. And you can think, okay, so this is where I am today. This is where I want to go. So, for example, if I wanted to look at how Butterfield Group, where do their VPs all come from in their private bank? You can look at their journeys and see, not all of our journeys are exactly the same, but you'll see common themes and you'll see how we got to where we are today. And you can do something similar if you want to look at different career paths. If you want to know more about those career paths, definitely reach out to individuals as well. People are quite receptive as well. I mean, I know I am. Maybe everyone's not as open, but the same way you've got, if you are at university, go and speak to your careers people, see which alumni are at the university who may have had similar career paths. Or if you are part of a professional body like I am with the CISI, go on their website. They've got a mentoring tool there as well, and so on. There's different avenues, but definitely reach out to people because they can tell you what these careers look like, as opposed to you just looking at it thinking that sounds great, because you might not really understand the career paths in great detail, especially at early stages. I didn't fully understand everything I was going into. It kind of worked out for me pretty well.
Alhamdulillah. But I wanted to know something. It's that, as I mentioned in the introduction, at this age, it's unusual to see such, you are younger than the average for a VP position, but you still are, and I'm so happy for you, well deserved. I want you to let us know, this is also great to inspire people. What was your vision on your career strategy? Like, what was your mindset telling yourself, okay, I need maybe to achieve this amount of clients, I need to grow my portfolio this way, etc., to achieve an expatriation, etc. What was your mindset all along your career to reach the point where today you are VP? Navigate us through your journey, please.
Okay. So, thank you for the kind words. It's, I do look at it sometimes, and yes, I am significantly younger than some of the others I work with, but I think from the start of my career path, I've never been happy just to sit and wait. I know some may say virtue, but I'd say the opposite. If I felt I was ready to do something, I would do it. And like I say, early on in my career, where I was lending and then working towards financial advice, I got that promotion in 9 months. I got told no one gets it in 9 months.
And 9 months, amazing.
So, but the same way, I had to push barriers and make things happen myself. So if I look back, my area manager at the time, we didn't have a vacancy in our region. I saw a vacancy came up in the neighboring region. I actually approached that area manager and said, hey, look, this is what I've done in this role. I'm ready for my next step. Would you be happy to have a chat? And I've gone to speak to him. Obviously, he was quite happy with me. But then in the end, my area decided to promote me within. So things like that, don't let things hold you back. If there are barriers, it's up to you to go out and find ways around it. But people will be different. I'm very driven, and I had certain targets at the start of my career, which have changed and evolved as I've gone along. Like I say, my first objective when I came into this career path was to become a financial advisor. Having achieved that within 2-3 years, quickly realized that actually there is more that I could be doing. So then, like I say, the next step was actually I want to be an international wealth manager, deal with bigger clients. I'd done that, and then I thought, okay, it's private banking, so I'll see where the next step is from here. But every time I will set myself targets, and I will push towards that. And ideally, you'd get promoted within, and you do that with the organization you're at. But if for whatever reason you feel there's barriers in place, there's nothing to stop you from going out and looking at the wider world and saying, okay, well, where else can I go to help accelerate my career? I think there's lots of benefits of staying with the same organization, but the same way, if that's going to hinder your progress, I would most definitely encourage people to look elsewhere. And if you can be geographically mobile, even better. As you can imagine, if you stay in one area, the opportunities are going to be limited. We're open to going anywhere in the world. That opens a lot more opportunity, and it will help you grow as an individual as well. But like I say, the key for me is sticking to your own time frames, not someone else's. Because sometimes I've had some great managers, but sometimes your manager's agenda and your agenda is going to be different.
Yeah.
They're going to want you to do very well in your role. Your next role might not be working for them. So it might not be in their interest to progress you to another role. And so it's looking beyond that. And like I say, mentorship and different ways to do that, qualifications and so on. But keep pushing yourself, keep going, and see how far you can get.
In a society where meritocracy is at its top, at its peak, you've got a great manager who's going to value meritocracy. Can you give us some practical things that someone can do to actually, for instance, you said in 9 months you got a promotion. I think for me it's mind-blowing. I can only imagine the work that has been behind it. For instance, people, I think when they're young, it's the right moment to do like extra hours, propose new ideas, make a difference, really bring innovation so that people can see you on the map, can tell, okay, this person is not just the average youth which is being replaced. This one, he has potential or she has potential. Can you tell us some practical things that you did in your early career or even then afterwards to try to make a difference? Maybe you can even tell us, since you're so senior, how at certain stages, early career, then mid-senior, etc., how were you doing some practical things to try to make a difference?
Yeah, I think with this, it's whenever you have reviews, whenever you're sitting down and putting a plan in place, I think one of the things a lot of people get wrong is they sit and rely on their managers to put that plan together for them. But for a very early stage, my development is my responsibility, not someone else's. So it'll be take control of your own development. It's up to you whether you want to develop or not. A manager may have a number of individuals they're managing. They can't focus all their time and efforts on you, and they don't know what you want. So it's about communicating that and putting a plan in place as well. So if you say, okay, in 6 months I want to achieve this, in 12 months I want to achieve that, and so on, and ask your manager or ask the hiring manager, okay, what will it take for me to get to the next step? And then start working towards that. You can make it time bound as well, making sure the plan's in place and you know what you need to do to get there. And then you've got something to challenge them with. You can get there and say, right, 6 months ago, we sat down and we said, if I achieve X, Y, and Z, I'll be working towards my next role. And if you've done that, then they'll have to tell you why they want to stop you from progressing to that next role. But the same way, if you just turn up and say, I want to do this, but have nothing to back it up, as a manager, I would say, well, what have you done to demonstrate you want that? As an example, so from lending and mortgages to investing, you need different qualifications. So one of the things I did is I went away and said, okay, I need to start my qualifications. I didn't finish them. I just did the first paper. But demonstrated to the hiring managers, actually, this guy's serious about what he wants to do. He's already gone out. He's already done the first paper towards this qualification. Whereas if I was an individual who just sat there and said, I want that job, I want to get promoted.
Very good.
What am I demonstrating to back that up? It's the same with performing in your current role. If you're not performing in your current role, you haven't even demonstrated you can do your current role, let alone a bigger role. So I would consider them quite basic things. But again, at a young age, you might not necessarily think in the same way. But make sure you concentrate on your current role. You can demonstrate that you're exceeding and doing a lot better than your peers. And then what are you doing to work towards that next step?
Absolutely love how you think. Very strategic. I love that. I also wanted to know something. It's that you transitioned from HR to private banking, wealth management. How has it been, this transition, in terms of the expectations? Like lending into HR, for instance, you had expectations, stereotypes of, okay, I'm going to talk to people, etc. Then you had expectations on the banking sector. How has it lived up to your expectations? Are you now passionate about your field? Do you feel that this is the field, I made the right choice? It's really what was made for me from the very start.
The good thing is, once I was in HR, I realized quite quickly that it wasn't where I wanted to be, and I'd done something about it. Because you do get a lot of people who go through their careers and say, I don't really enjoy what I do, and, I've been doing this for 10 years, and, it's too late to change, and blah, blah, blah. But I think given the current situation at work and so on, people are a little bit more flexible as well. And the good thing for me, like I said, it was still very early days in my career. And I was able to then do my master's, because my choices for my master's was to do a master's in HR and get qualified to continue through HR, or do something else. And I chose something else. But it is a different world, completely different world. In HR, I think it's harder to measure what you're doing day to day. I think in the banking and finance industry, measures are a little bit more black and white. Whereas HR, I'd work 9 to 5. It'd be fairly set hours, steady. And these are the type of things that really made me think I want something more and something different. Whereas in this industry, I go all the way back to the start of my career in that branch, working. So to give you one example, you'd all work 5 days a week, and then you'd rotate Saturdays. Generally, no one wanted to work Saturdays because they had better things to do with their time. They want to go to work on a Saturday, which is fine. But strategically, I decided to work every Saturday. And the reason for that is Saturdays were our busiest days, where I'd write the most business, which will mean that I stand out compared to everyone else. Good. So these are the things that I've done. It's the same when I started lending. Talk about 9 to 5 hours. There's been days where I've sat with my old bank manager when I was a mortgage advisor, and we've worked 9 to 9. We kept the branch open because we realized we can only fit X amount of mortgage applications in a day. But right now, market's hot. We can get more applications done. Let's both stay here until 9 o'clock. We've done things like that. I've done a lot of this in the past. To an extent, it is a bit different here, but I do still work extremely hard. I know if someone saw my social media, they'll see great pictures of beaches and scenery and barbecues and so on, and might think, this guy's living a great life. And don't get me wrong, it is a lovely place to live. It's an amazing place to live. But there's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes. And post, when I'm studying and waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go on a course, or the evenings I put in for different events and so on. I'm going to post that all the time. People will see the highlight reel and they'll think, wow, what an amazing life. And don't get me wrong, like I say, I do feel very fortunate to live the life I live. But the same way, there's an awful lot of hard work that's gone on both prior and still goes on every day now. So if you want to succeed, you're going to have to work hard. Because if you don't, you're never going to make it. It's, people don't get paid a lot of money not to work hard.
Exactly. You've been working in lending. You've been working in mortgage as a financial advisor. How did your approach change? Because you've worn multiple hats. How did your approach change towards your field? Do you think like now that you've explored so much functions that you feel that you're in a position to really have a macro view of the banking sector? Do you feel this way? Or do you think you have still certain sectors of finance that you need to learn to still evolve at your seniority and at your age?
Yeah, so with my journey as well, it's been quite strategic in terms of the experiences I've gained and the roles that I've done. If you back at all my roles, they actually all fill this role quite well. It gives me, like I say, so the main things I do is I help my clients and guide them when they look at investing or lending. I've then got my colleague who supports them on the day-to-day banking side. I've got management responsibility. So these all fit in with previous roles I've done. Like I say, where I've been a lender, where I've given wealth advice, where I've been in a management position, they all come in and tie in very well with what I do now. And this is where I think it helps me excel in my current role. And obviously working with people, which really, really helps. But the experiences, like I say, none of this, nothing that happened in my career was by accident or by luck. It was planned out. The organizations I've worked for and the roles I've ended up doing at them were a bit different. I was approached for a number of roles. I didn't necessarily look for that specific organization or that specific, but I was looking at certain experiences that I needed, certain gaps that I had, and I saw them as the next step each time.
Excellent. Wanted to know also another thing. We talked about the fact that you handle high net worth, ultra high net worth type of clients. Can you tell us maybe how you manage and grow relationship with such clients? Because in the start of your career, it was, I suppose, clients, let's say, with a lower income. Now it's way, way more. I suppose the relationships are completely different to manage, but also to evolve through time. What is your vision on this? How do you handle it?
I think when you get to this level, your clients will expect a certain minimum from the person in front of them. They'll expect people to know certain things, to have certain experiences and so on. That's probably the starting point. It really helps when, so for me, image is very important, both, in terms of your online presence, in terms of how you come across, what they can read about you and what they can research about you, and in terms of you as an individual sitting in front of them. So that's really important. The challenges here are that probably earlier on in my career, people were more single banked. Their loyalties would be with one bank, or most of their wealth would be with one bank and so on. Here, they're generally multi-banked.
Oh.
Yeah, so you're always competing with someone else. And me being in Bermuda, I don't just think I'm competing with the other banks on the island. I take the approach of I am competing against the whole world here. My clients are international. They're going to have banking relationships all over the world. They're not going to come to Bermuda and say, oh, I expect a low level of service because that is what I'm going to get in Bermuda. If they're sitting in front of me, they're getting the same service as someone would have got in the UK, where it's a highly, highly competitive environment where if you don't respond to an email within a day, they'll go somewhere else. Here, no one's generally going to respond very quickly, but they'll get that from me, the same service they'll receive if they're in New York, if they're in London, and so on. So it's just making sure your standards are very high, that you're very receptive to what clients are asking for and response rates, and getting to know your clients is important as well. Because before, I'd have bigger books of clients. I've had lots of clients to speak to and get to know and so on. I won't have as much time for each client. Whereas at this level, I have less clients. I can spend more time getting to know them. And I think, the evolution of everything else in terms of the internet and online presence, you can find out about clients before you even sit down in front of them. So, and the same for them. Like I say, they can, I'd go on LinkedIn, I'll see if my clients are on LinkedIn, or I'll just do a Google search. And most of my clients will come up if I do a Google search. The high profile individual.
Oh my God.
I can see who they are, I can read a bit about their background. And the same way, you want to go in prepared for meetings, because they're not saying, Karim, you started last week, so you should know nothing about me. No, they're saying, I've been at this bank for 20 years. You should know 20 years worth of stuff about me. So before you sit in front of them, you do your research. You understand what you can from the records you have, and then you have a conversation with the individual. Whereas earlier on, if you're dealing with customers in a branch, it's transactional. They come in, you do what they want, and they go. They may know your name, they might not, and the same, you don't know anything about them, very basic details and so on. But this is what I like about my role now. I can get to know my clients. In my previous role, I spent 6.5 years with my clients. I got to know some of them very well. They knew me very well. And it's building that relationship, it's getting to know them. But you need to be competent. You need to make sure you do what you say you do and so on.
The objective throughout this episode, I also want to raise the financial culture of the people who are going to listen to in the audience. Bermuda is known to be an offshore financial center. I want to know what makes Bermuda unique in terms of private banking. You mentioned the competition, for instance, it's a worldwide competition. Every place, for instance, Sharjah or Abu Dhabi, they're all competing with each other. It's a multinational world, it's a global economy. What makes Bermuda differs from like the other financial hubs? That would be very interesting.
Yeah, I think Bermuda is very unique. It's 2 hours from New York, a direct flight from New York.
No way.
Flights, it's got direct flights to Canada as well, and a direct flight to London. So you do get a lot of people look at Bermuda from London, Canada, and New York. It's a UK overseas territory as well, which helps, and it has those ties to the UK. And obviously they speak English here, which helps. So there's lots of reasons why people will be here. People might want to come here for a second home, or they might want to set up here and live here. And there are certain ways the government encourage people to come over and live here. But in terms of your banking needs, you can look at diversification, for example. People might be highly concentrated in one market, and they might say, okay, where else can I look? Bermuda has a lot of wealth, has low crime, wonderful weather, and a great lifestyle. It is a slower pace than the UK, it is a slower pace than New York. I've got clients who live in New York who say, listen, Karim, I spend half a year in New York, a quarter of a year traveling, and a quarter of a year in Bermuda. But Bermuda is where I can recharge, but still get things done, because the time zone from New York is only an hour difference, so it's great. The UK is a bit more of a struggle. It's 4 hours difference. So I still sometimes get my phone ringing, at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and, people are like, but it's 8 o'clock. I'm like, not for me, it's not. So, yeah, it's got lots and lots of great things in Bermuda. It really does. If you get a chance to visit, please do. But for other people as well, the currency as well, it's pegged to the US dollar. So there's a lot of stability in the currency. The country as a whole as well, it is a financial hub. There's a lot of money on the island, both in terms of wealth on the island and people who invest their money here. But the banking systems and the regulations here are quite high. So certain places around the world, you may not want to necessarily bank because the requirements are very low. But here, for example, we try and follow quite high standards. So yeah, all of this really helps.
Karim, you're the first executive that trusts me in this project, and just for this, thank you so much for accepting to be on this podcast. I'm honestly so honored that you accepted. Alhamdulillah, I'm truly so blessed. This is one question I really wanted to ask you. What are some of the most recurring tasks that you go through in a week or in a day?
Yeah, so a typical week in our role, what it might look like. So we'd have a management meeting maybe once every week or so, or other week. I'd have a catch up with head of private bank, and I'll have a catch up with my reports as well. Throughout the week, I'll have meetings with my clients. So I tend to have between 5 and 8 meetings a week with clients. That can be client meetings in the office, at their place of residence, for lunch, for coffees, or whatever it might be. One of the other things I tend to do is at least one networking event a week. So that might be something we host or something that we've been invited to.
Yeah.
But generally, that's what a week would look like. Now, it may not sound very busy from that, but in terms of the actual detail and the work that comes from all of that, it's extremely busy. So I try and take at least one day a week where I'd work from home, sit down, get all my admin out the way. The other 4 days, I want to be out and about as much as possible. So for me, one of my aims is to be in front of as many clients as possible, or be in at as many events as possible. So profile is very important. People want to see you out and about. They want to know who you are, what your business is, and why they should work with you, and so on. So, like I say, for me, it's making sure we're out there. For me, it's always promoting the brand, promoting our private bank, and promoting me as an individual. But yeah, generally, like I say, that's what a week would look like.
Very smart, honestly fascinating. I wanted to know a couple of questions, and I know you're very busy. How can we encourage more Muslims to pursue corporate careers, but also to follow your path to reach this type of level, to be at executive level?
So I think for Muslims, I can understand why individuals find it quite hard to work in this industry. So, for example, a lot of the events we have, and I think this industry as a whole has quite a big drinking culture,
I see.
lens they'll have, and so on. And maybe some individuals won't feel comfortable with it. But it doesn't necessarily mean they have to do what everyone else is do to fit in, but the same, and see why there's certain barriers. But how I look at it, look, I was in the UK. The UK is very diverse. It's got millions of Muslims. I think in the UK you're quite fine, but it's still challenges, but it's a lot easier to integrate. I look at Jersey. You have less than 0.5% of Muslims on the island. You're talking hundreds, less than 400 on a whole.
My God.
You look at Bermuda, you're looking at, I think it was less than 1% as well, 0.8%, less than
What?
So different places will have different challenges. You will be different. People won't necessarily understand certain things about your religion. But for me, education is a big thing. I'm quite open. I like talking about my religion or what I do and so on. But for individuals, it is really tough, because I get why certain individuals would want to stay away from certain careers and certain industries. But the same way, there are people that can progress through these careers and still keep their values at the same time. But it goes deeper than that as well. Some people only believe in certain banking systems. They won't necessarily be okay with the way we do business. So it just comes down to the individual, what they're comfortable with, what they're not. So what I would say is look at yourself as an individual and see whether you feel you'd be comfortable with these careers. And if you are, pursue it. There's some great people in these organizations, in this industry, who will support you and who will help accommodate you as well. They won't say just because you're Muslim and you're different. I mean, for example, we host executive lunches, and when we have those, my chef knows my dietary requirements.
Amazing.
Yeah, so he knows I have halal food. To be honest, it's easier. Since I've been on this island, most people just assume, I say I'm pescatarian. It's just easier to explain than say I would like halal food, because then the question is, what is halal food?
Oh my God.
So, it's the chef understands, a great chef, and he understands that. So when he has the opportunity to bring in halal food, he will for me. And the other occasions, I'll have a pescatarian meal. So therefore, most people just assume I'm pescatarian, which is fine, and I'm fine with that. I'd rather sometimes avoid going into all the complexities, unless it's with people that know me well, that talk to me quite often, might be out and about with me. So, people I work with day to day. Because, it's quite confusing when I say I'm pescatarian and then they see pictures of me having a barbecue on the weekend and there's meat on it. But so when it comes to explaining it, it's there are challenges. Look, I've obviously lived and breathed it for 13 years, and I continue to do so. And sometimes it is a bit difficult, and sometimes it is, slightly annoying. But I feel I've had great support from organizations, from individuals. And if you have the opportunity to get involved in the DE&I side of things in organizations, please do, because that's where you can actually make a difference and you can explain what it is that's important to you. Because if they don't have any representation from certain groups, they may not necessarily represent your views because they don't know. So it's important to do that. And where I've done that, like I say, I feel I've been able to make a difference, both for myself and for others. But for me, I think the key thing is just making sure that you are comfortable, the career path you're choosing, and that there's certain barriers and certain challenges you will face. You go into it with your eyes wide open. But the same way, it doesn't mean you can't have a career in banking and finance. You can look at Islamic finance. And that's something I have explored as well. But the same way, I'm quite comfortable with this banking system and I'm fine with it. Most industries, you'd be fine, depending on what you're comfortable with, you can still find certain ways to practice your beliefs and still follow career paths throughout it. So like I say, mine as an example, if you want to go into banking and finance, there is Islamic finance. You can follow that route if you feel that's more appropriate for you than others. It may mean that it's a little bit more niche and the opportunities are more limited, but you can still follow that career path.
I was so happy during your talk because this was some high value advice. There was only one question I had left because I value your time so greatly. Is there anything, upcoming project or initiative that you're excited about that you would like to share with the audience that would be, we can only make du'as for you for it to succeed. We want to see you shine. Tell us.
It's very kind of you. And like I say, from my point of view, it's been great of you to invite me to join your podcast. Like I say, I see this as a privilege to be able to share my experiences. If I can inspire others have some positive impact on their career choices or on their careers or whatever it might be, then great. But for me, it's like I say, I'm very active on LinkedIn. Feel free to add me on that, follow me on that. And if there's any questions people have, and if they want to know more about my journey or how I can potentially support them, please do reach out. I think, it's great to have individuals out there who can help you during your career path. And, 13 years on, I still remember the two individuals from my branch in Santander that I looked up to, the financial advisors in that branch. I still speak to them even today. And we talk about our time at Santander and so on. And it's the same. As you go through your journey, reach out to different people. You may have different people who can help you. I know you've said some really kind words to me, but I feel, I've done okay so far. There's still a long way to go to where I want to be. But keep pushing yourself, keep moving forward. And I think the key for me is making sure that you stay on your own career path and your timescale, not on other people's.
One thing I wanted to ask is a little request. We have a tradition of asking a question that we could pass along, as you have seen. Do you have any question that we can pass along for our next guest?
One question I would like to ask them is, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Excellent. Very good. That's noted. Honestly, Karim, you have mentioned at one point that you were privileged, but this is nothing in comparison of how honored I was from having you here, sharing your experiences, insight, advice with us. Honestly, thank you so much for being here today. Jazakallahu khairan, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, and thanks again for having me.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. That's all for today's episode, guys. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you have any feedback or suggestion for future episodes, please reach out to us on our social media channels. And don't forget, please, to subscribe, rate and review our show on your favorite podcast platform. This would really help us a lot. Until next time, well, stay inspired, stay curious, and keep changing the game.